matter, which will start with elasticity, will also be one of the easier chapters in physics. Okay, so we'll complete this in a very efficient and as fast as possible kind of manner. Then we will move on to, after that, oscillations and waves, which is a more complex chapter compared to these last few chapters that we've done, like fluid mechanics and properties of matter doing now. And previous to that, even heat and thermodynamics was quite a straightforward chapter. So anyhow, let's begin. So the first aspect of properties of matter that we'll understand is a property of all materials, regardless of their type, their form or their state, etc., is the property of elasticity. So can anybody tell me the definition of elasticity, or the general, you can say the general specification of the term elasticity? What do we mean by the term elasticity of a material? Or can you give me an example of elasticity? Yes, Ayush, that's correct. Flexibility to a certain extent. Okay. Yes, Ansh, very good. The tendency to regain shape. Okay. So when a material, yes, Aman, that's correct. Okay. Steel is an example of an elastic material. That's correct, Ansh. So yes, Aman has more or less given the complete definition that when any material undergoes a deformity because of some external forces acting on it, and then we withdraw that external force, so it has a tendency to retain its original shape and form. That tendency to retain that original shape and form, that is called the elasticity of a material. Okay. Yes, the restorative tendency, another way to express it, that is elasticity. Okay. So the opposite of elasticity is something that we call plasticity. Okay, so you can think of a material that behaves in a plastic manner, just like soft plastic, that when you tend to, let's say, deform it, like you can take a plastic rod and you can subject it to a high amount of tension, because of which it will tend to stretch. Now, when you withdraw the external force which is creating the tension, the soft plastic rod will not have a tendency to retain its original shape. It would have got deformed forever, or it would have got what we call permanently deformed. So that tendency for not restoring back to the original shape, that is the opposite of elasticity, which we call plasticity. Whereas the tendency to retain the original shape, like the most simplest example is that of a rubber band. If you stretch a rubber band and then you release it, it has a tendency to come back to its original shape. But of course, you will agree with me that that is up to a certain limit of force. If we apply more than a certain amount of force, even the rubber of the rubber band shows a plastic deformity, that it will tend to get stretched in such a manner that it doesn't tend to retain its original shape. Or if we even apply force more than a certain limit, then it will tend to fracture or break at a certain point. So those are properties which are, you can say, counter to the property of elasticity. So all materials have a certain amount of elasticity, but then under certain conditions of extreme force from an external agent, they lose that property of elasticity also. So it's a general tendency that bodies will tend to have, or materials will tend to retain their original shape up to a certain limit of the amount of deformity that we are creating. But beyond a certain limit of deformity, they might tend to get permanently deformed, or they might even tend to break or fracture. Okay. So let's summarize this with a proper understanding, first of all, of the term elasticity. Then we will come to the other terms like plasticity, and breaking and fracture, etc., things like that. So elasticity is the tendency of any material body to restore itself to its natural shape when deformed due to the action of external forces. So this tendency is called elasticity. So for example, a spring exhibits what we call longitudinal elasticity. That's another very intuitive example of understanding elasticity. So a spring has a sort of a natural shape, or what we call natural length. But so if this is, let's say, the natural length of the spring, when it is not under any external force, under the action of any external force. So this is the natural length dimension. Now, the moment we subject it to some kind of external forces, like this, for example, so we will see that the spring now has an internal tension as a reaction to that external force. Okay. And also it's got deformed, it has got stretched. So it is in what we call the elongated or deformed state. So the tension in the spring is the internal conservative force that is restorative in nature. So the property of tension, okay, so this tension acts as a result of a property called elasticity, which is a material property. It is a so it depends on what material the spring is made of the particular metal of the spring. So elasticity is what we call a material property, and it exhibits itself in this way that whenever a body made of a particular material is subjected to external forces in such a way that it is deformed, okay, then within the body internal forces develop in such a way that they tend to restore. So there's restorative internal conservative forces that develop within the body such that they have a tendency to restore it back or retain the original shape which it had, or what we call the natural shape, in the absence of any deformity. So that tendency of creating that internal conservative force that is restorative in nature, that tendency is what we call the elastic property of the material. Of course, this is like the word definition. Now we will also quantify it, that what we mean mathematically or what we mean in terms of formula as the elasticity. Yeah, sorry, we'll continue. Just yeah, so next thing we will understand is the origin of elasticity. Before we come to the formulae of stress and strain and all these things, let us understand that at the molecular level, what is responsible for elasticity, which is a sort of universal property that all materials have to a certain extent. Of course, different materials have different amounts of elasticity, so larger or lesser elasticity. Okay, so soft plastic, for example, hardly has any elasticity compared to steel or rubber. Okay, but nonetheless, all materials display some amount of elasticity or the other. Okay, so the origin of elasticity, it is from the nature of intermolecular attractive forces, or it is the nature of intermolecular bonds. In all matter, and that can be exhibited very simply by just visualizing the potential energy associated with intermolecular bonds, or what we can call as the bond energy with respect to distance between two molecules. So here U is the potential energy associated with the interaction between two molecules at a distance r, or in simple terms it is what we can think of as bond energy. Now that bond energy, experimentally when we determine it from empirical data, the behavior of that bond energy is something like this. It's always a graph which has a point of high stability, and as you go away from that point of stability, there is a restorative force on either side. So in general, negative value of potential energy always means stability, but the value where it has the local minimum, that is where we have the stable equilibrium. So you can see that at r equal to r naught, which is the effective bond length, U as local minimum. So there is a stable equilibrium position between the two interacting molecules. And whether we bring the molecules closer, than the natural bond length, or we bring it to R naught plus delta R, further apart, than the natural bond length, there is restorative force at the molecular level or at the intermolecular interaction level. So this is what creates elasticity in what we call the macro scale. Macro is the opposite of micro. Okay. So at the molecular or at the micro scale, the interaction between two molecules is such that they always exist at a stable equilibrium at a certain optimal distance, which is called the natural bond length. Now, due to any external factors, if we try to push the molecules, two molecules closer than this optimal bond length, they'll naturally tend to repel each other. There's a repulsion tendency. Whereas if we try to bring them further away from each other, we try to pull them apart, then there's a natural attraction tendency. So together, these create the property of restorative forces. So when a material at the macro level, that is at the non-microscopic level, when a body made of a certain material is subject to this kind of deformity, at the molecular level, each pair of molecule is applying restorative force on each other. So that is why at the macro level, we experience elastic nature or conservative restorative forces. Okay, so now that we have understood at the molecular level the origin of elasticity, now let's look at certain types of what we call stress and strain. Okay. So types of deformity and the associated stress and strain. So in general, strain is a measure of the amount of deformity, okay, as a fractional change. So by fractional change of any parameter, we mean delta x by x. That is a fractional change in x. Okay. By a fractional change of the related dimension. So for example, longitudinal stress is the fractional change in length delta L by L for a body, typically a longitudinal shaped body. Like a rod, a rope, etc. Okay, so these kind of shapes. So longitudinal stress is the fractional change in length for a body of natural length L. So like that, we have different type of stresses and strains that we define. So in general, the quantities, sorry, not stress, this should be strain by mistake. Stress is what creates strain, and the strain is the measure of the amount of deformity. Okay. So first of all, what we mean by the term strain is that it is a way of measuring how much deformity has occurred. And how we measure it by expressing as a fractional change in some kind of dimensional parameter. For example, in case of longitudinal strain, the dimensional parameter is the length. Okay. Whereas stress is a parameter of the type force per unit area. Which causes deformity or basically causes strain. So just like I've given you the example of longitudinal strain, we'll also see different examples of types of stress. Okay, so we'll come back to types of deformity and their associated stresses and strains. But in general, what is strain? Strain is a mathematical parameter that is associated with the amount of deformity. It tells us about how much the body is deformed by expressing some kind of fractional change in some kind of geometrical parameter. Like longitudinal strain is the fractional change in the geometrical parameter of the length of the given body. Whereas stress is a parameter which is of the type force per unit area, and it is effectively stress that causes strain. So it is like a cause and effect. We cause stress and that creates strain. The effect of stress is strain. Okay, so now let's look at the three primary types of stress and strain. So the type 1 is longitudinal stress and strain, also called tensile stress or strain. So in general, a longitudinal deformity is the deformity in natural length. And by deformity, we can mean either extension or compression in length due to external forces. So for example, if we have, let's say, a metallic cylinder, which is of natural length L, metallic rod or cylinder or whatever, which is of natural length L and cross section. Okay, assume it has uniform cross section A like this. Now, the moment we subject this kind of thing to external forces which are outwards, it will tend to deform by elongating. Or if we subject it to external forces which are inwards, then it will tend to compress. So in an elongated state, we like this because of external forces, let's say like this, or in a compressed state. Now at this stage, we are not worried about what's happening to the area of cross section. Okay, let's keep that aside. In any case, the area of cross section is small. So the longitudinal stress in either case, for a case of extension or a state of or a situation of compression, whichever be the case. Okay, the longitudinal stress, this is defined as, sorry, the longitudinal strain, my mistake. The longitudinal strain is defined as the fractional change in length. And remember, delta L is a modulus quantity over here. Okay. It's the amount of change. So in the case of extension, it is the amount of extension. In the case of compression, it is the amount of compression. So this is how we define the term longitudinal strain. So note this down first. Next, we will see the term longitudinal stress. And finally, we'll see how they are related to each other. Okay, now how do we define the longitudinal strain? Let's understand. So in either of these cases, what will happen is that as a result of the external force, an internal tension builds up. Okay. Here the tension is restorative and outwards. So the associated longitudinal strain is tension divided by cross-sectional area, or T by A. But here we understand tension is an internal force, restorative in nature, that acts normal, that is perpendicular to the cross section. Okay. Due to the deformity in the material. So it is an effect of the deformity. You understand? The molecules are being stretched further apart from each other or being compressed together. So that internal force is immediately creating that tension. And that tension is giving the body the tendency to come back to its natural shape or the elasticity. It's very important to understand that the direction of this tension at any cross section is normal or perpendicular to the surface of the cross section. So one more thing you can note down here is that strain is a unitless quantity, unitless or dimensionless. Whereas stress, which you can see from the formula of longitudinal stress here, but in general also stress of any type has dimension of force per unit area, or ml minus 1 t to the power minus 2. It's expressed in newtons per meter square. Okay, now, so people, any questions so far? Okay, I'm just going through the text messages. Yes, Aman, to answer your question, thermal expansion does create stress. In fact, there is a whole section which is part of thermal expansion, which is to do with, yes, thanks for pointing out, people. This is longitudinal stress and not strain. So in case you did not figure this out, please make a correction in this, people. This is longitudinal stress. Stress has the dimension of force per unit area, where strain is dimensionless. Yeah, coming back to your question, Aman, yes, there's something called thermal stress, which we will be discussing as part of this section only of elasticity. So we will see that when subjected to especially extreme temperatures for metallic objects, etc., they experience what is called thermal stress because of their tendency to either compress or expand because of the extreme change in temperature. And then put together the property of elasticity. So they experience extreme amount of stress and strain because of thermal effects. So that particular type of stress and strain created because of thermal effect or change in temperature is called thermal stress. If you remember during heat and thermodynamics portion of thermal expansion, I told you to leave out questions based on thermal stress because we had not done elasticity before. So now we'll be looking at those questions when we come back to that section. Okay, now moving on, let us see the relationship between stress and strain. Okay. In the case of longitudinal stress and strain, for example, so there is something called Hooke's law, which is an experimental law. That for any material deformed, okay, such that its behavior is elastic. That means it has a tendency to restore itself to natural shape. Okay. The stress and strain have a uniform ratio. Okay. And this ratio is called the modulus of elasticity, which is again a material property. So in the case of longitudinal stress and strain, this ratio is given a specific name called the Young's modulus, as you might have heard. Okay. So longitudinal stress is ratio with longitudinal strain. Is equal to Young's modulus of elasticity. Again, Young was the name of a scientist, like Hooke was also the name of a scientist. Or we can express it like this, that tension per unit area divided by fractional change in length is a material property called the Young's modulus of elasticity. For stress, such that body is showing an elastic nature. So I'll explain further what this term means a little bit. Just make sure you're clear up to this point first. Okay, so what this statement basically means over here that this Hooke's law is, you can say, exhibited in the behavior up to a certain limit of stress. Okay, beyond that limit, what will happen? The material will not be elastic. It loses its elastic property. And you can say it exhibits plasticity, which is the tendency to get permanently deformed. So Hooke's law is that ratio of stress upon strain is a uniform quantity called the modulus of elasticity. So Hooke's law is valid up to a certain limit of stress, because beyond that limit of stress, what will happen is that any material will have a certain limit beyond which it loses its property of elasticity and it starts to behave starts to exhibit plasticity. Okay. Now also, typically metals have Young's modulus of the order of magnitude 10 raised power 11 Newton per meter square. I'll give you some specific examples also. So steel, typically, nickel type steel has a Young's modulus of about 2 into 10 raised power 11 Newton per meter square. Okay. Chromium has about 2.48 into 10 raised power 11. Copper has about 1.2 into 10 raised power 11. So on and so forth. Okay. Anyhow, so let's look at an example.
Just a minute, can you show the previous slide?
Sorry, come again, beta.
Sir, I just wanted to note down the values.
Yeah, this is just for your reference. Okay, you don't have to remember these values. In numerical problems that you have to solve, etc., the Young's modulus will be given to you. Okay. Just the general awareness that typically for metals, it's generally of the order 10 raised by 11 Newton per meter square.
Answer.
Yeah. So let's get an idea of what this means in terms of how much a metallic wire or rod or something will tend to stretch or compress under the action of some kind of force. So let's look at a typical numerical example to understand this. So we have, let's say, a sort of thin metallic wire that we are using to suspend a heavy object. So because the metallic wire we are considering is thin, we'll consider it to be almost massless compared to the object that we are considering. So this is a thin metallic wire which is of negligible mass. Now it is of Young's modulus, let's say 2 into 10 raised power 11 Newton per meter square. Its natural length is 5 meters. This is Young's modulus for the metal. And its cross-sectional area is, let us say, 20 millimeters square. Now we are using this to suspend a heavy block whose weight is, let's say, about 2000 newtons. That means its mass is 200 kgs. And let's take GS 10 meters per second square. So we want to find out all these things, the stress, the strain. So we'll start with tension. Okay. From that, we'll get the longitudinal stress. From that, we'll get the longitudinal strain. L stands for longitudinal over here. And from that, we will get the amount of deformity, that is the extension delta L caused because of the weight of this. Because of the weight of the block, it will be in an elongated state. So the amount of extension or the amount of elongation we have to calculate. So this will give us an idea of a typical practical example of how a typical steel wire of this kind of dimension will behave under the action of a weight which is something like this, a weight of 2000 newtons. Okay. So it's a formula based question. As you can see, you have to just step by step apply first of all the Newton's laws concept that a massless wire or thread or whatever will experience a uniform tension at all points equal to the weight of this block. So from that you apply the definition of longitudinal stress, that it is tension divided by the area of cross section. Then you apply for the next part for longitudinal strain, you apply Hooke's law, that stress upon strain is equal to the modulus of elasticity, or in this case the Young's modulus of elasticity, which is given to you for the material. And from that you can calculate the elongation delta L. Yeah, so Snikita, to answer your question, basically, it is not that simple in that case. But what we can think is that the external forces that act on a body tend to cause it to deform. And as the body deforms, the molecules are either coming apart or they are coming closer. And that is creating those restorative forces which create stress. So deformation, you can say, is caused by the action of external effects, and that creates internally the restorative forces which creates stress. But then when you think of it the other way around, that a body which is deformed under the action of external forces, if we suddenly withdraw the external forces, so it is not like because we have withdrawn the external forces, so the deformity has become zero, so the stress has become zero. It's actually the other way around. When we withdraw the external forces, it's the restorative forces which create the elasticity, which cause the deformity to become zero. Understood my point now?
Yes, sir.
So that cause effect thing is a little difficult to define in this case, but you can say that they are like they are related to each other. Where there is stress, there will be strain. Where there is strain, there will be stress. Okay.
Yes, sir. Got it.
If the strain is released, then automatically the stress will also get released, and so on and so on. Okay, so I will just confirm the answers for you all. Vaishnavi and Naman, your answer is correct so far. Okay, so as you can see, this is absolutely formula based. You can see that if you make the FBD of the block, you realize the tension acting on it is equal to its weight. So that is 2000 newtons. So now if you think of the wire itself, the metallic wire, because it is massless, or because we can consider it to be massless, there's the same amount of tension acting at all points. So it has a uniform tension of 2000 newtons. So therefore it has a uniform stress. Now again, practically when you are calculating, thinking, you might say that, okay, under the extension, the area of cross section will tend to decrease because this area given to you was for the natural shape of the body. So how we can define the longitudinal stress in that case? But the whole idea is that because the area has a small dimension, okay, or the cross section is dimensionally small compared to the length. So the change in area is negligible over here, we'll consider. Okay, later we'll see there's something called Poisson's ratio also, which is another material property, which tells us the relationship between how the area of cross section changes because of longitudinal stress. But here in these type of problems, we'll assume that the change in area is negligible. So we will consider the uniform longitudinal stress to be this tension created by the external force divided by that uniform cross-sectional area. So in other words, here it is becoming 2000 newtons divided by 20 millimeters square. So that is 20 into 10 raised power minus 6 meters square. So as you can see, the longitudinal stress is becoming 10 raised power 3 divided by 10 raised power minus 5. So that's becoming 10 raised power 8 Newton per meter square. So this is the longitudinal stress created. So as a result of this stress, we can calculate the strain that is equal to stress upon Young's modulus, because longitudinal stress divided by longitudinal strain is this. So the strain is 10 raised power 8 Newton per meter square divided by 2 into 10 raised power 11. So that's becoming 5 into 10 raised power minus 4. Right? That is the value of delta L by L. So this is our longitudinal strain. Whereas this was our longitudinal stress. Okay, and since L was equal to 5 meters, so we can see that delta L is 5 into 5 into 10 raised power minus 4. So 25 into 10 raised to minus 4 meters, or you can say 2.5 millimeters. So a 5 meter long wire like this, under the action of the weight of a 200 kg block, will tend to just about extend by 2.5 millimeters. Or you can also think of it like this, that there's a 0.5% change in length. If you calculate delta L by L percentage change, it is 0.5%. Okay, so pretty simple stuff, as you can see. Okay. Now let us come to stress and strain. Different types. Okay, then we'll come back to Young's modulus and more examples related to that. So the second type of stress and strain, okay, is what we call shearing. Okay, so shearing is a type of deformity due to bending of a body. Okay, so this kind of deformity which I'm drawing next, this is called shearing. If this is the natural shape of an object, let's say, now if we cause it to bend like this, okay, this is a very exaggerated picture I'm drawing. Like typically, it's a very slight angle by which it shears. But in this case, we say that deformity is such that the body is undergone shearing. So this kind of shearing will happen typically when we apply forces tangentially to the surface, like this. So it will tend to bend through an angle. So this kind of deformity is called shearing. This is the deformed state. So this shearing strain is basically the angle by which it bends. Now, typically the angle is very small. So if this dimension is L and on undergoing the deformity, this length here is X. So typically this is approximately equal to X by L, or theta is tan theta. So shearing strain can also be approximated as X by L. Okay. And this is caused by the tangential force which is acting. So if the cross-sectional area for this is A, okay, then shearing stress is defined as tangential force per unit cross-sectional area. Okay. So basically, if we apply the external force like this, you can see that an internal tangential sort of force acts like this. Okay. So this will become that internal tangential force which is restorative in nature divided by cross-sectional area. So you can see here that due to the action of external forces, body is sheared, okay, and internal restorative force Ft acts tangentially. Okay. So for those tangential internal forces, the shearing stress is that tangential force per unit area of cross section. So just make a note of this definition of shearing first. Then we'll discuss about the modulus of elasticity associated with shearing stress and strain. Okay, so Hooke's law says that the ratio of shearing stress to shearing strain is a material property called the modulus of rigidity. So the symbol eta is used for okay, which is again a material property. And finally, the third type of elasticity and stress and strain we'll discuss about is volume stress and strain. So if a three-dimensional object has a natural volume V under the action of atmospheric pressure P naught, okay, then it will tend to undergo a compression whereby its volume will decrease if subjected to external pressure which is in excess of atmospheric pressure. So if the external pressure becomes the normal atmospheric pressure plus something, okay, then the volume compresses. Or alternately, if the external pressure is P minus delta P, then the volume becomes V plus delta V. So it can undergo volumetric compression, like in this case, due to excess pressure. Or it can undergo volumetric expansion due to deficit in pressure. And the volume stress is just defined as delta P. So this is defined with algebraic sign. unlike the other type of stresses, which are just defined as magnitude of a force upon area. Okay. So this is also fractional change in volume. With algebraic sign. So Bulk's modulus of elasticity is in fact defined as negative of delta P divided by delta V by V. So beta is called Bulk's modulus of elasticity. So for example, for a solid body, when delta P is positive, delta V by V will be negative, and vice versa. So Bulk's modulus is a positive quantity. However, we'll see that volumetric stress and strain and Bulk's modulus of elasticity are also applicable to fluids, particularly to ideal gases, etc. And then depending on the type of process they are undergoing, Bulk's modulus can even become a negative quantity. So make a note of this first, then we'll understand more about that. So the equation that we have written to define Bulk's modulus and its relationship with volumetric stress and strain, that is again called Hooke's law. But Hooke's law applied to the situation of volumetric stress and strain this time. Okay, so let's look at a typical example. So for example, we have something like this. We have a solid rubber sphere. Now let's say Bulk's modulus of elasticity of rubber is equal to 9 into 10 raised power 7 Newton per meter square. So a solid rubber sphere is taken under water, density of water 1 gram per cc, to a depth of, let's say, 3 meters. Calculate the volumetric stress, the volumetric strain, and the percentage change in the radius of the stream. Take G as 10 meters per second square. So very simple type of question. Again, directly formula based. Just try this out and send me the answers. Okay, let's verify the answers to this. So you can see that the volumetric stress is basically the excess pressure, which will be the hydrostatic pressure, no? Because you're taking it underwater. You're taking it. Now assume the depth to which we are taking it is very large compared to the radius of the sphere. So we don't need to consider different depths at different points. Okay. Or if we substitute the depth as h, so this will be density of water into g into h. So that is 10 raised power 3 into 10 into 3. So 3 into 10 raised power 4 pascals on Newton per meter square. That is the volume stress. And it's with a positive sign because it's Latin. Okay, so if the natural volume B was 4 by 3 pi r cube, okay. Now the compressed volume B minus delta V will be equal to 4 by 3 pi into r minus some delta r cube, where this the negative sign is just showing us that it's a compression. Compression by, let's say, 0.33% by volume. And 5 minutes on this. Okay, so it's a 0.33% compression by volume, as you can see. Yes, that's correct, Aman and Kevin. So what about the percentage change in radius? Okay, so for that you can apply the concept of propagation of error or propagation of small change. So volume is proportional to r cube. Okay, so you can see that percentage change in volume is 3 times percentage change in radius. So you can see that the radius will compress by 0.11% or this kind of fraction. Right, so this is the straightforward type of formula-based applications that you can see. Kevin, you understood the third part now? Yeah, okay. So a lot of the questions in this section are going to be pretty straightforward formula-based. Okay. However, especially at the JEE advanced level, there will be some applications which are a little bit more complicated, where some calculus kind of things can come into the picture. So let's look at an example of that. Let's look at an example of a situation with non-uniform stress and application of Hooke's law. So very typical example of that is a heavy metallic beam or something like that, a longitudinal object, but which is of considerable mass hanging under its own weight. So as you've seen in mechanics, there is a non-uniform tension that is developed in such a material. Okay. So this is a metallic, let's say, pillar. So let's say Young's modulus of the metal is again given to us. Its mass is, let's say, 500 kgs. Its natural length was 2 meters. And its cross-sectional area was 10 centimeters square. So now under the action of its own weight, it will be elongated. So you want to find out. So what we first of all want to do is, if we consider a point inside, which is at a distance x from the bottom, find tension T and stress at the point P as functions of x. Okay. And then you calculate from that the total elongation delta. So this is an example of this kind of situation. Non-uniform stress because of non-uniform tension. So just quickly tell me the answer to the first part, people. Right. So you must have got the first part, all of you. All you have to do is make a free body diagram of this section of the rod, let's say. Make a FBD of just this section between P and A. You can see that the tension at P as a function of X will be balancing the weight of this section. So the weight of this section will be linear mass density multiplied by the length of that section. So tension at the point P is mgx by L as a function of X. So you can see that at B, X is equal to L. You have the maximum tension which is equal to the weight of the rod. At A, X is tending to 0, so minimum tension is tending to 0. Like this, okay. So you can see that stress at any general point like this is a linear function of X. Now about the strain, about the total elongation. So what we have to do is that in this rod only, we have to first consider a differential element. Okay. And see that, suppose we had the long rod in a natural situation. I mean, in a non-stressed or strained kind of situation. Just a moment. Yeah, just share the file again. Yeah, so supposing you first consider the same pillar or rod in its natural shape condition. And there you consider an element which had a natural thickness of dx at a distance x, like this. Okay. Now what is happening in this vertical situation when it is under stress because of its own weight? This section itself has got a little bit elongated. This has become dx plus delta of dx. Okay, so this is a small change in the quantity dx itself. We'll take it as delta of dx. Okay. Because this has also increased and overall the length has increased. This has happened because here this was in unstressed condition. Okay. Whereas this is now stressed. In fact, it is elongated because of the tension acting like this. Okay. So this tension at the point P as a function of x, which was mg by L into x, that is creating a stress at that point P, which is mg by Al into x. So that is creating a strain for that differential element, which is delta of dx divided by dx. So that is equal to stress upon Young's modulus. Okay, because strain is equal to longitudinal stress divided by Young's modulus. Okay, so that small change in dx itself is mg by ay L into x dx. I just cross multiplying this. Okay. So if we put together by integration the summation of small changes in all elements, get from x equal to 0 to x equal to L. So we get delta L on this side, and that is equal to L square by 2 on this side. You can also see like this that delta L by L is mg by, or it's like half of mg by A divided by Young's modulus. So it is like average stress divided by area. So you can see that average stress is half of mg by A. But more importantly, the elongation is this much. So we'll see more of these type of examples in the upcoming session of elasticity next. Okay, and we'll also look at elasticity or the relationship between stress and strain beyond what we call the elastic limit of stress, when the body stops behaving according to Hooke's law and it exhibits plasticity, and eventually it might even fracture or it might undergo breakage because of extreme amount of stress. Okay, so we'll see when the behavior between stress and strain changes to non-linear, and therefore you can say in a sense that the behavior of the material does not adhere to Hooke's law that stress should be proportional to strain. Okay, but that will be only a qualitative analysis, whereas the quantitative analysis or numerical analysis will be limited to situations where the stress is between is within what is called the elastic limit. So we can apply Hooke's law, which is the proportionality kind of relationship. So again, this is not a very difficult section, just another 2 or 3 types of variations of questions, and we should be done with elasticity. So in the next lecture, we can look to complete elasticity and move on towards surface tension and viscosity, which will be the last part of properties of matter. Okay. Also, make sure you complete all questions of fluid mechanics as soon as possible, so that in the next session, if there are any doubts and questions, we can discuss that also. So that's it for today's session, people. Wish you all the best. Thanks for attending.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
It's okay, people. Bye.
Thank you, sir.